Hello aspirants. In the past week, you would be knowing about the Hindu editorials. There were numerous editorials which were being discussed on United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea. So I will be trying to decipher that particular knowledge for you. And in the recent times, what has happened is that the Prime Minister of India, he actually gave a speech in the United Nations when the India became president of non-permanent members in the United Nations Security Council, and the topic which he selected was about maritime security. So that is why many of the print media houses, they are printing a lot of editorials on the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. So what I am going to do in this particular video is that I will be discussing what is United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea. I will be trying to get you know why these laws have been started and when it has been started. I will be trying to use the background. I will try to explain the background on how the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea started. Thereafter, I will also try to decipher the news which is related to India and what is the perspective that it has for the maritime security or the UNCLOS. Actually, India wants other major country to ratify the UNCLOS, but many of the countries has not ratified, and the most major powerhouse of the world, United States of America, has not ratified it. So it will be in the benefit of the India when the United States also ratifies this particular law. So there was an editorial in the Hindu where it was stated that India should pressurize, India should use its tactics in the United Nations Security Council so that United States and other major powerhouses, superpowers of the world can ratify the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. So this will be the first news that I am going to discuss, and you will be knowing a wide area of what UNCLOS is, why it has been implemented, what are the perspectives that India gives for the UNCLOS, what are the different schemes that the Prime Minister has emphasized on in his past years. And after that, the second part that we will be discussing will be of retrospective law. You would be very much familiar about the retrospective law. The recent times what has happened is that the Union government has brought an amendment law against the retrospective tax. Retrospective tax was initiated in 2012, and I will be talking about what is retrospective tax, why it was implemented, what were the backgrounds of the cases that were related to retrospective tax. I will also let you know what are the amendments that has happened right now and what will be the consequences that will occur after this amendment in the retrospective taxes. The third part which I will be discussing about will be the IPCC report, the International Panel on Climate Change. So I will be a climate report has been published by the IPCC. It comes up with the name of Assessment Report 6. So we will try to know what are the features of the AS6. I will let you know that why IPCC advises on 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature to be maintained by the world nations. That is what the report has said. So I will explain that what is IPCC, what are the features that are given in the report, what the world should do in regards with the climate change. In the continuation of the video about the IPCC, we will be trying to know what are the carbon emissions that has to be limited and what does the IPCC report says about it. So all the three parts that I am going to discuss, these will be very much beneficial for all those aspirants who are pursuing their civil services examination. The first part which I will be discussing will be United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea, and this particular part is related to maritime security, and maritime security belongs to the internal security of GS3. So this particular portion will be helpful both for both of your prelims and mains examination, as because there are many facts that will be included in this particular video, whereas for mains examination you will be getting a comprehensive detail on what UNCLOS is all about. The second part is retrospective tax, and this is related to the taxation part, and taxation mainly belong to the Indian economy of the GS3 paper. There are many facts included in the retrospective tax, whereas you will be able to know what retrospective tax is, and if you are a pursuant of the civil service examination, you would be knowing that whenever a prelims question is asked in UPSC, those are deciphered into small statements, and these statements are actually related to a certain topic which you may or may not have read in the current affairs part. So in the third part, there is IPCC report on climate change. This particular part is related to environment, climate change, and other things related to climate. So this can be deciphered into subject of geography also, and this can also be part of environment ecology. Environment ecology is part of GS3, whereas geography is part of GS1. So you will be getting as much knowledge for both these portions, and you will also be getting facts and figures for your prelims examination. So this is basically going to be a very comprehensive video which will be helping you in your prelims and mains examination. So let's start with this particular video and know what are the elaborations for all these topics. So I am Ritesh Shukla, and this is Disa Publications current analysis of the Hindu editorial. So let's start with the UNCLOS topic, and we will start with the news first, because Prime Minister was addressing United Nations Security Council, and the topic was enhancing maritime security, a case for international cooperation. So this was the topic that he was addressing to in the United Nations Security Council, where currently India is presiding on the non-permanent member of the UNSC. So we will continue with this particular part. What has happened is that Prime Minister stated that the maritime security is of prime importance for each and every country, and whoever the most powerful countries of the world are, they need to ratify the UNCLOS. So that is where we will have to understand what UNCLOS is. The acronym for the UNCLOS is United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea. So this particular law was established in, so UNCLOS is also popularly called as Law of the Sea, or the Law of the Sea Treaty. UNCLOS as a Law of the Sea came into operation and became effective from 16th November 1982. However, the first time such a proposal was announced before the United Nations was in the year 1973. Over the course of 9 years, with the representations from over 160 countries, the UNCLOS came into existence in around 1994. Before that, there was a school of thought which was called as Freedom of the Seas, and under this Freedom of the Seas, whatever the country which were doing selling or trade or any kind of other stuff on the sea were free to do so without any jurisdiction, without any boundaries, without any limitations. So this freedom of sea was the school of thought that was persuaded by many of the countries of the West. The main requirement of the UNCLOS happened when the sea was used as missile launch pads, and when every country, almost each and every country, say for instance United States, Russia, or even the countries from the Gulf, when they started to use the sea as missile launch pad, that is when the other countries of the world started to say that a law has to be maintained for the sea also, and that is where United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea third conference was held. And when this third conference was held, at that particular time a member nation of the UNCLOS stated that a certain kind of law of the sea must be implemented or established. Earlier, United States had its own mechanism, and it was about the jurisdiction that its state has considered for the seas. So what United States wanted was, it was exploring many of the resources in the seabed, and whatever the resources that it used to get, it simply used to exercise, it simply used to use it with its country, and it never used to share. So that is why a certain kind of law was to be implemented, and whenever a certain kind of law like UNCLOS is going to be implemented, it is going to hamper, it is going to harm countries like United States, because they were almost hegemonically trying to encroach as much area on the sea than that they were having on the land. So when the UNCLOS was established, the United States, though being a member of the UNCLOS conference, it never ratified it, because the prime reason which UNCLOS, which United States always proceeded with, was Part 11 of the UNCLOS. Now let's know what is the Part 11 of the UNCLOS. Actually, the UNCLOS is is a law that is being authorized by the International Whaling Commission and International Seabed Authority. The Part 11 of the UNCLOS is the sole basis why International Seabed Authority was established, and this particular authority is related to regulation and organization of resources that will be found on the continental shelf of the sea. So United States has problem with this particular part, because ISA, International Seabed Authority, emphasizes on regulation of resources, and United States want to have freedom when they are wanting to exercise their control on the regulation of resources. So that is the main reason why United States is not ratifying the UNCLOS, because of the Part 11 of the UNCLOS. Now let's know what are the parts of what are the features of UNCLOS. The first part is UNCLOS at the current time is the prevailing law of the sea, and it is binding completely. This is the main feature of the UNCLOS. The second thing is, even as the name of the nautical law suggests, a United Nations involvement, the UN does not have any involvement, any functional role in the functioning of UNCLOS. This is the second most important feature of the UNCLOS. There are around 17 parts, 320 articles and 9 annexes of the UNCLOS. The law of the sea provides for full money rights to the nations for 200 mile zone by the shoreline. The sea and the oceanic bed extending this area is regarded to be an exclusive economic zone, and any country can use these waters for its economic utilization. This is the third most important part of UNCLOS, and probably is the main cause why the UNCLOS was established. The fourth part is International Maritime Organization. It's an organization which plays a vital role in the operation of UNCLOS along with the IMO. Now let's know about the India's perspective regarding the maritime security. So India, along with the many members of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, we will know what is Indian Ocean IORA, and what is the perspective of India that it develops for the maritime security is that it wants to achieve sustainable use of the Indian ocean resources. The concept of blue economy has drawn attention in areas of ocean energy, deep sea mining and marine biotechnology. This is thoroughly backed up by blue diplomacy. India is actively engaging itself in blue diplomacy to harness the available perks from the maritime development. So we will from here try to know what is Indian Ocean region. So Indian Ocean can be located from the Africa to Australia, and the wider area that we see in between Africa and Australia, that is Indian Ocean. Whereas in the northern part, when you get through India, there is the Indian Ocean is divided into two parts beside India. The left hand side of the India is Arabian Sea, whereas the right hand side is Bay of Bengal. So these particular area also belong to Indian Ocean. Whatever the country that has mouth towards the ocean or the sea, all those countries are member nation of IORA. and this is also the Indian Ocean region. So I will explain to you what is the area of Indian shoreline. India is a nation with a 7,500 kilometer coastline, 1,200 islands, and exclusive economic zone of 2.4 million kilometers, of which only about 1.5 million kilometers has been explored so far, along with the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, as I already told you. Its maritime reliance on trade and energy is nearly totaling for about 1.5 million kilometers only. The IOR shelters 51 countries and around 35% of the world population. This is a region. Now let's know what is India's maritime policy until now. The first thing is the core part. What is the core part of the maritime policy? The core is maritime infrastructure of the homeland, development of island assets, connectivity with the immediate neighbors, and with littoral implications. Littoral means all those states which are connected through the sea or the ocean. Those are called littoral states. The second part is the next circle, which includes maritime space beyond its borders, island countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles, providing security to these particular countries and also taking as much from them. On land, restoration of connectivity to the extended neighborhood to the east and west side also, both are the most important aspect of our security providing. Both have direct implications for the ability of India to safeguard waters on a larger scale while ensuring economic consolidation of hinterland. Now the third part is outermost circle. It takes India to Pacific, engaging converging interests to ensure core security while promoting stable periphery. Developing policy exchanges, capability exercises, and cooperation mechanism in that regard is work under progress. So this is the third part, which is outermost circle of the IORA, which actually is an extension of IORA, and it connects India with the Pacific Ocean in the eastern side. Now let's know what is Indian Ocean Rim Association. The Indian Ocean Rim Association is an intergovernmental organization which was established on 7th March 1997, and this has been located in Ibin, cyber city of Mauritius. Now what does the IORA do? IORA's apex body is the Council of Foreign Ministers, which meet annually. The United Arab Emirates assumed the role of chair since November 2019, and it will continue until November 2021, followed by the People's Republic of Bangladesh. A committee of senior officials meet twice a year to see the progress of IORA agenda and consider recommendations by working groups and forms of officials, business, and academics to implement policies and projects to improve the lives of people living within the Indian Ocean region. Now let's know about what is the government's vision regarding the Indian Ocean region. The foremost perspective which the Indian government has proceeded with is Sagar mission, and we will try to know what is the vision of the Sagar and what are the features of the Sagar initiative. The Sagar initiative is abbreviated as Security and Growth for All in the region, aimed at safeguarding maritime interest of the mainland and islands. Now let's know what are the features of the Sagar initiative. Sagar is a term coined by Prime Minister Modi in his visit to Mauritius in 2015. It is a maritime initiative which gives priority to Indian Ocean region for ensuring peace, stability, and prosperity of India in the Indian Ocean region. The goal is to seek climate of trust and transparency, respect for international maritime rules and norms by all countries, sensitivity to each other's interests, peaceful resolution of maritime issues, and increase in maritime cooperation. It has actually been established in line with the principles of UNCLOS. Let's know what is the need, what is the significance of Sagar. The first thing is it is going to leverage blue economy. Blue economy presents India with an unprecedented opportunity to meet its national socio-economic objectives, which include livelihood generation, achieving security, achieving energy security, building ecological resilience, as well as strengthening connectivity with neighbors. Apart from it, blue economy provides many opportunities. For example, oceans provide a substantial portion of the global population with food and livelihood, as well as transportation of 80% of the global trade. The seabed currently provides 32% of the global supply of hydrocarbons, with exploration expanding. New technologies are opening frontiers of marine resource development, for bioprospecting to mining of seabed mineral resources. The most important aspect of the Sagar would be tackling regional issues. The first is there is a need to strengthen efforts to provide humanitarian assistance in wake of natural disasters to the neighboring countries. Second is India seeks an integrated approach and cooperative future, which will result in sustainable development for all in the Indian Oceanic region. Another important aspect why we need Sagar is checking Chinese influence. So the third aspect is countering the Chinese influence. What China is doing is it is increasing its military presence in each and every country beside, which is in particular neighbor to India. Say for example, China has established a military port at Hambantota in Sri Lanka, whereas it has also developed a port in Bangladesh, Myanmar. It has developed a port in Pakistan, that is Gwadar in Pakistan. It has developed a port in Kenya, Somalia. So what China is trying to do is it is trying to encircle India strategically, and it is countering it by establishing military at these certain points. Even in the current regime of the Sri Lanka, the Hambantota port was to be used as a place where military could be established, military could be placed, Chinese military could be placed. But the recent regime, after the change of recent regime, this particular port has not been allowed to use as military base. So this encircling of India is strategically important for China, and this is called a string of pearls. So India is also trying to counter the string of pearls strategy, and what India is doing is it is establishing a port at Iran, which is Chabahar port, and it is developing the port in accordance with how China is developing ports at other countries. So India is also trying to improve its regional relation through Sagar initiative, because it is wanting each and every country to be independent and also use the resources of the sea in a very colloquial manner. The Chinese, whereas try to do things hegemonically, they do not believe in the matter of cooperation, whereas India believes in matter of cooperation. So any country which is associated with the Indian Ocean region, it allows the country, or it always has a certain strategy that a particular country which is associated with Indian Ocean region must use the resources of the Indian Ocean region, and it must always be for the sustainable development rather than exploitation of the resources. So this is the prime objective of the Sagar vision, to counter Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean region. Now let's know what is the significance of Sagar vision. Sagar provides a mechanism for India to expand strategic partnerships with other IOR littorals in Asia and Africa. Sagar indicates the leadership role and responsibilities India is ready to play in the region for a long-term basis in a transparent manner through its capacity building and capability enhancement programs. The third point is the key relevance of Sagar emerges when seen in conjunction with India's other policies impacting the maritime domain, like Act East Policy, Sagar Mala Project, Project Mausam. India as a net security provider focus on blue economy. Let's know what are the associated challenges of India in the field of maritime security. The first thing is the global commons approach. Everyone's property is no one's responsibility to using marine resources, especially in areas beyond national jurisdiction with no oversight on issue of governance, access and benefit sharing. Sagar Vision has created engagement of multiple players, the duplication of action and regional dependence on international activities. Now, as we were talking about Sagar initiative, we talked about how it has been established. The Sagar Vision has been established, seeing that many of the China's disutterances are actually affecting India's perspectives in Indian Ocean region. There are other things also which affect India's prospects in Indian Ocean region, and those are piracy and smuggling that happens in the ocean region, particularly in the Arabian Sea or the areas which are nearby Somalia. That is a country in Africa. So the most important thing for India is to secure the Arabian Sea, because many of the ships which has loaded products either being exported or imported from the European countries or United States actually go through the Suez Canal, which actually belongs or goes through the Red Sea and is connected to the Mediterranean Sea, where Somalia and Yemen, the two countries, has their mouth at. So the portion which connects Red Sea from the Indian Ocean is the area where security for these ships are very much important. And when the security of these ships are talked about, and that also in reference to the piracy, kind of organization must always be there. So we will be talking about that particular organization, and the organization that we are talking about is RECAP, RECAAP. What is RECAP? RECAP is the first regional government-to-government agreement to promote and enhance cooperation against piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia and Africa. The RECAP agreement was launched in November 2006 with 14 Asian contracting parties. The membership of the RECAP has expanded from 14 Asian countries to in 2006 to 20 countries. That is, 14 are from Asia, whereas 4 countries are from Europe, and with the addition of Australia and United States. France, Germany and Greece are taking respective procedures to join the RECAP, which is a very important security measure for the Indian Ocean region. Now, what is the significance of RECAP? One of the key features of RECAP is information sharing through regional cooperation. During the last 15 years, the RECAP ISC, which is the International Security Center, has been making efforts to provide timely and accurate information on the incidents of piracy and sea robbery to the RECAP contracting parties and maritime community at large. The main source of information is focal point of 20 contracting parties who send the incident report through the information network system. Now let's know what is the significance of RECAP. One of the key features of RECAP is information sharing through regional cooperation. Has been making efforts to provide timely and accurate information on the incidents of piracy and sea robbery to the RECAP contracting parties and maritime community at large. The second most important significant thing about RECAP is the main source of information is the focal point of 20 parties, contracting parties, who send the incident reports through the information network system, IFN. And the IFN operates a 24/7 web-based network system which links the center with 20 focal points. The center is using a data analytics tool to make a deeper analysis of the situation by identifying the correlations between various factors of the incidents, as well as comparing with patterns of past incidents. The center, the International Security Center, issues warning and alert on serious incidents or a location of frequent incidents in order to advise the littoral states to take effective measures and the shipping industry to enhance vigilance and adopt preventive measures in these areas of concern in the Indian Ocean region. Now, why actually all these security measures are being taken? In the very recent time, around a total of 97 incidents had occurred and 2 were attempted of piracy and armed robbery against ships, which were reported in Asia in 2020 itself. There are accounts, this accounts for a 17% increase in the total number of incidents and a 32% increase in actual incidents reported in 2020 in comparison to 2019. The increase of incidents in 2020 occurred in Bangladesh, India, Philippines, Vietnam, South China Sea and Singapore Strait. In India, 9 incidents were reported in 2020 compared to 5 incidents which were reported in 2019. Perpetrators involved in the 3 incidents that occurred at Alang and off Gujarat were arrested, and since the last arrest of perpetrators in April 2020, no incident has been reported in Gujarat or Alang area. So all these activities which happen in the Indian Ocean region regarding the piracy and smuggling, whatever security measures are adopted by the either by the Indian Coast Guards or whatever the perspective that India has developed for providing security measures, anything which happens in the Indian Ocean region, that has to be collectively done by the Indian Ocean Rim Association member nations. And whenever these nations come together and provide security to these particular areas, these areas will become more and more secure, and the trade and facilitation which go through these areas will be more comfortable for the member nation of the IORA. This is the most important thing. That is why various initiatives are being opening up and various laws are being made for maritime security. Now, there are other reasons also which are very much important. Say for example, if we talk about the South China Sea, China is a very hegemonic type country which always wants as much sea area to their country as they have their area of land. So China actually has made 9-dash line in the South China Sea, which is a large chunk of the ocean, and this particular sea belongs to the Pacific Ocean, but the overall 9-dash line is actually occupying all of the South China and East China Sea, whereas all the Asian nations are unable to get any of the area of the sea because of this 9-dash line which has been created by the China. What happened was the International Court of Justice actually put aside this 9-dash line and said that Association of Southeast Asian Nations, all the 10 member countries also have their fair share in the sea area, and they can have a chunk of sea area in the South China Sea and East China Sea. But the Chinese people have set aside the judgment which was given by the ICJ, and they continue with the 9-dash line, and they are actually having a large they are having control over large islands which are known as Paracel Islands, Scarborough Island, and many islands which were also in the past were part of other countries like Japan. So the hegemonic nature of China is also becoming an increasing challenge for the countries which belong to the Indian Ocean region, as well as those countries which belong to the Pacific Ocean. This is also an increasing challenge for all those laws that will be created for the sea. Now, as I was talking about the news, it was about how India should use its strategic method so that the powerhouses of the world would ratify the UNCLOS, and the most major country of the world, which is United States, has not ratified the UNCLOS. So we will try to know what actually United States of America is losing when it has not ratified UNCLOS. By rejecting UNCLOS, the United States loses out on national security. oceanic trade, resource extraction, and its own value on the overall world regarding the rule of law. The earlier president Donald Trump, he did not take any position on acceding the UNCLOS. He would have decided to push it through Congress, but nothing specifically happened. So what India should do is it should ask the current regime to ratify the UNCLOS, because if the United States ratifies UNCLOS, the faith on UNCLOS by the member countries will strengthen, and United States is a very major country which has a major chunk of share on the sea, both in Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, and definitely its ratification of the UNCLOS is going to be a bridge which would be constructed in between member nations of the UNCLOS.